Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to one more episode in the series of Family Life, an initiative by the Family Department of the Sembradores de Luz, an institution that is 100% virtual and supports families, youth, educators in 4 different languages to learn more about Spiritism in their own language. Today, I'm going to be your host. My name is Nahur Fonseca. I'm talking from Boston, Massachusetts, and we are going to talk about how to approach the topic of death with children and young people. And we're going to have 2 guests with us today. First, Michele Soto and Kathleen Amity. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So, Kathleen, why don't you go first? And then I'm going to invite Michele.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. This is my first time, so I'm very happy. I'm Kathleen Amity. I go to a Spiritist Center here in San Diego, California, and I also work with. I'm a shadow work, end of life, and grief coach. So I work with right now adults, but I have worked with children in the past who are grieving and or facing their transition. So yeah, this is just I also work at the Spiritist Center, do some lectures there, and it's been a pleasure. I mean, it's been a great experience overall. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Kathleen. So I understand you have a business that help adults to deal with grief, but you have worked with children before. Plus, you also have, I believe, are a volunteer at the Spiritist Center in San Diego, right?
Right, that's correct. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for coming. And Michele?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm happy to be back here. I go to the center. Well, let me go back. I'm in Virginia, and I attend the center in Maryland called Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Maryland. I coordinate the Department of Youth, Children, and Family. So I work with children since babies all the way to 18 years old. And professionally, I'm an early educator. Sorry, guys, my English is someone else
We
today.
understood. So you were a teacher. You were a teacher for kids from what,
People.
4 to 6 or 0 to
Yes.
5, like
No, my babies are 3 to 5.
3 to 5. Okay. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for taking some time to be with us today and to talk about such an important topic. I think it's a little heavy to say, oh, we're going to talk about death today, right? So before we begin, I'd like to share a little story. It's like a comic book, like it's a cartoon, to maybe just bring down a little bit this dread that we may have sometimes when we talk about death, especially if we have to touch the subject with the young children, right? So in this illustration here that I'm going to show to you, we have this little girl, and she's talking to her parent, to her father, right? And she has just lost a pet. So she says, oh, my turtle is dead. He was alive this morning. And then the dad says, oh, now, don't get so upset, honey. And then the child, you can see in the picture, he becomes more sad, almost crying. And then, okay, don't cry. It's just a turtle. And then she goes even a bigger tantrum. Oh, stop that. I'll buy you another turtle. And then, no, I don't want another one. Now you're being unreasonable, right? So see how it's funny, but it shows an escalation. Because the more the father tries to avoid talking about the subject, avoid or denying the feeling that the child is having, the more upset she gets. It's like you're trying to talk to someone and they don't listen to you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is another way. This book, by the way, what I took this illustration is called How to Talk to Kids. So they will listen, and how to listen so they will talk. It has a cover like this. It's by Adele Farber and Elaine Maslish.
Mm.
Now let's go to the second version of the same dialogue, right? And you see, it doesn't need to be too difficult, right? So the same situation. My turtle is dead. He was alive this morning. And then the dad just acknowledges, right? Oh, what a shock. Yeah, he was my friend. To lose a friend can hurt. I taught him to do tricks. You two had fun together. I fed him every day. You really cared about that turtle. So see how differently just
Right.
naming the feeling that she was having. So he acknowledged that she was hurting, grieve. Maybe the child is too young; she doesn't understand the word grieve, so it's just hurting, right? I made tricks. Oh, we had fun together, right? Another feeling. You had fun, and I fed him every day. Another feeling. You cared about him, right? So just giving feedback to the child that you acknowledge her. He didn't have to buy another turtle, right? At least not now.
Mhm.
So this was just to illustrate that you don't even need to go into a long explanation what death is or spiritual realm. Sometimes, depending on the age of the child, just acknowledge the feeling is more important. So I would like to ask you, maybe Michelle, and then maybe um, Caitlin, how to how usually a child may bring up this conversation to a parent or a teacher since you're in a classroom,
Mhm.
and how you usually uh, handle it, and if you're in a spiritist center setting, how can you introduce spiritist concepts in that response, in that dialogue?
Okay. Well, first of all, I really appreciate that you brought this
Cartoon.
cartoon, this story to us. It's very important to validate the feelings a child and even adults. We like to have our emotions validated, right?
Mhm.
Our fears, our anxiety about something that's about to happen. Validation is key. Also during grief periods, and we need to also observe and take into consideration the child's age, because the language you are going to use has to be appropriate. So that child needs to respect the cognition development, the emotions, the social emotion developmental phase of that child. So if you validate what they're feeling, if you explain what death is, like how Nahur said, don't be afraid to talk to your child. We need to tell them. As adults, we usually tend to overprotect children, not breaking this news, not talking about difficult moments, because we think the child will not understand, will not accept, or is too young. Children are smarter, more resilient than we think.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, no, instead of saying grieving, you can say, oh, it's hurting. It's difficult to deal with that, right? Validate their emotions. Okay, you are sad now, but they can understand all that.
Mm-hmm.
And wait for the child to ask questions so we don't um, explain more than the child
Yeah.
wants to know or is ready to understand. So a young child um, from until 5 years old, they think that death, they don't have an idea that death is final, right?
Mm.
It's
Young
just
children.
young children. For them, death is something transitional. It's
Mm-hmm.
not
Mhm.
forever. As
Right.
a school age child can understand that it's final, but they still associate to ghosts or to skeleton, right?
Mm.
There's always a personification of that death.
Yeah.
And from 12 and up, they can understand perfectly what death is. And of course, we need to explain. We need, but we need to know what to expect as reactions, because that might have an impact on their behavior.
So, Michelle, you are in a classroom setting. So
Hmm.
like in our cartoon, the girl said to his father, "The turtle died. It was alive this morning, died." Have you ever had that kind of experience? Like, child come to you, "Oh, my grandfather died," or something, in the middle of the class, right?
I had an experience with a pet,
A
a
pet
dog.
as well. Okay.
Yes, a dog. And the mom gave me the heads up in advance, right? So I would know if the child brought up, and in fact, she did. And I asked her what was her name and what did you do together. And I understand that it's very sad. You gotta miss her for a while, but she's probably in a better place now because mom told her that the dog was in heaven, running
Mhm.
around, not sick anymore. So I reinforced what mom had explained to her, and I validated her feelings and reassured her that the dog would be
Mhm.
fine because God would be taking care of her puppy and she would be fine here too. That feeling in a while would just go away. She'll always remember the dog, but that hurting feeling would go away. And she
Yeah.
was fine. Never touched the subject again.
Okay. Uh, so, like a follow-up question to that, like, how would you change your answer if you're in a spiritism setting, like in a maybe in a classroom, like for children, right?
Well, then I have a story of my own to tell. A friend of mine and the kids, she's part of our spiritist education educators group, and her son has been in the program since he was a baby. He started at 6 months, so this child already knows. He's 7 now, so he already knows
Uh-huh.
quite a bit from of spiritism. And one day, her mom was really sick at the hospital, and she had to go visit her mom and asked me to pick her son from school. And I did. So I got there and I said, honey, I came to pick you up because mom had to go see your grandma at the hospital. He looked at me and said, oh, I know, my grandma's dying. And I was like, yes. And it's like, but that's okay. In a while, she's going to come back anyway. Because he knows about reincarnation. He already knows about both realms of life,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
that we belong there and not here.
Yes.
So, and I was shocked. To be honest, I was shocked with
Yeah.
his reaction, and he was so calm about it. But we had another one whose grandma died, and
Uh-huh.
he was a little frail because of that, really sad. So we read a book to him. We prepared a lesson, a class based on um, disincarnation and reincarnation and what happens to people who are still here and to
Mm-hmm.
the spirits that arrive in the spiritual world. And he was fine with that too, which
Okay.
proved to us that if we explain to them, we make it easier for them to
Yeah.
cope with the situation.
Yeah.
Hiding things is
So
never a solution.
Agree.
so what I heard, what you're saying is, first of all, there was a partnership between you and the parents in both situations,
Both
right?
situations. Mhm.
And in the setting of spiritism, it kind of helped the child to uh, process the death more easily because it's more natural, right? Like that death is part of life; it's natural reincarnation. But I like to switch to Kathleen. Like sometimes it's easy, you get lucky, and the child just process it like that. But sometimes the child and the deceased person, maybe a grandparent, maybe a friend, they are too close, and now the child may feel grief, right? May, maybe it's really hard for them to process it. So how can we help Kathleen in those situations? Do we need to see a professional, or at what point the spiritism and professionals can collaborate to help the child in that sense?
Right. Yeah, I think that it benefits, the more the merrier. You know how they say, like, it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child. So the more involvement that we can have, if the child is requiring that, then the better. I can only see that it would only benefit if the child is open to it. So I think that if there was a big attachment between the child and the loved one that passed away, um I, I think it's what, like Michelle said, you validate. I mean, it's important to meet the child where they are,
Mm-hmm.
and the truth is that there was a very strong connection,
Yeah.
and with spiritism you can actually explain a lot of how that it's not the end. The death of the body is not the end. You can continue to develop that relationship. You can continue to have a relationship with that person. It's just different. So
Mm.
there is that point of acknowledging that it's no longer going to be the same, because that's a loss. That's
Yes.
it's the child is not going to experience the relationship as it was in this body, in this life, with that person. So there's the acknowledgement of this is over. This is, and that's this. Can you imagine how it feels? If you can imagine how it feels for you as an adult who has a lot of coping skills and resilience and gone through a lot, can you imagine what it is for a child?
Yeah.
So having that idea of there is a loss, and there's also the opportunity of this relationship continues.
Hmm.
And even if we are not seeing them here right now, even if we are not like, we cannot hug them, we cannot do the activities, the child cannot do the activities that he used to, there are ways to do to still connect. Like we know, for example, a prayer can help connect us
Yeah.
with our loved one. Or rituals, like sometimes, and when I say ritual, it's kind of like it can be maybe the child going to the park that they used to do, or doing an activity with that person and kind of talking with them, or doing
Hmm.
a prayer at the place that they used to do. So
Hmm.
that can, a lot of these things, it helps kind of build a relationship with the loved one, with the understanding as well, with the spiritism, that the person, the body, the change that happened was the transition of going to the spiritual
Yeah.
world. It's not the end, as like that's it, they're gone forever, but it's just a transition of, it's a little different now. Let's try to work with rebuilding a
Got it.
relationship with how it is now.
So, just like before, don't deny the feelings, the hurt, the absence, right? Acknowledge that there was a transformation of the
Right.
relationship, but say that this give them tools how to uh, continue that relationship through prayer, maybe some kind of uh, habits that they used to do together, do it again in their honor, right? I
Right.
hear a lot in Chic Xavier has some message from young uh, children who died to their
Mhm.
parents, right? He wrote many letters, right? And a
Mhm.
recurring theme in those answers, those responses, those letters was that don't cry too much, right?
Mhm.
Because that may
Makes
um,
sense.
makes it harder. The spirits are sadder in the spiritual realm. So maybe
Right.
help the child understand that, right? And
Mhm.
the other thing that the spirits recommend is do charitable work, do prayer in their names as a way
Mhm.
to
Right.
honor their memories, right? If they
Mhm.
liked to kittens, maybe you go volunteer in a place that have cats or something like this, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think I have another follow-up question for you, Caitlin, that came online
Mhm.
because you're a professional, right? So what if I am a parent and my child is struggling and I don't feel comfortable talking to her about that? So what are the resources in the center, in the spiritual center, or professionally that I can seek to help me with
Right.
my child?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the center is a great place in to help build that understanding of the transition, right? That there is no real end, the way that we think. So it does give a little bit of a hope as well. But I mean, you can always seek. I find that therapy, it's great for that, because
Mm-hmm.
what I find, and me being, I have a background in therapy, and now I'm a coach. I find that what is most important is, what I feel like people need the most is a space where they can just be with their grief,
Mm,
because society doesn't really like we said, we are very uncomfortable talking about that. We're very uncomfortable talking about grief. We don't want to, it's like it's seen as like a negative. We for many reasons we try to avoid to speak about it. So it's not like the world and life right now, the way it is, it's giving a lot of space for us to experience this very human, natural experience.
mm,
So a lot of the times it's just having a container where the child can be, and it helps. I even go further and say the adult, the caregiver, seek also, because
yes.
modeling is how a lot of children, the biggest way that the children is going to learn. So how you model how grieving is how they are going to learn. Is if all of a sudden you're hiding your emotions, you're saying, "Oh, I'm worried that it's going to hurt them." What you I end up teaching the child is like, it's not okay to grieve. It's not,
Yes.
death
Yeah.
is not good. So the child is going to end up having this conflict inside of like, I am feeling this human thing, and
Hmm.
I cannot express and I cannot be because apparently it's not okay for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
I was going to mention that. So it's very important for the parents to model, right? And if you're
Hmm.
not comfortable with the death yourself, maybe the parent needs to seek counseling as well. And it could be a fraternal counseling at the center, right, where someone
Hmm.
will talk to them. Or if that's not enough, maybe seek therapy, right? And maybe just acknowledge, it's very hard for me as well. Why don't we seek help, right? And
For sure.
and this way, both parents and children can seek the help of a professional to deal with the grief.
And please ask help from the Spiritist educators.
Yes.
We're trained, we study
I
for
was
that.
going to ask you, Michelle. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so we're there for you, you
as a
know.
parent, right? Let's say I have children of different ages.
Mm-hmm.
So and we do the gospel at home, the God at home meetings. Um, how do I talk about that with, because I know if I read from the gospel or the Spirit's book, half of the kids will sleep, right? So how can we make it interesting for them? So
Well,
can you give any pointers?
yeah, well, as a teacher, I love books. And children's books are my favorite. So there are a lot of books, either in Spiritism. We don't have as many translated to English,
Hmm.
but we do have a lot of them in Portuguese, and even books that are not spiritists. There are, the literature is very rich out there, and I have actually made a list of some books that I could refer, maybe put on the chat,
Yeah.
that you can use even during the gospel to read that book and do the gospel based, the discussion based on that book. That's a moment, a family moment, a safe place and time to talk about it,
Hmm.
especially because we have the company of the good spirits with
Yeah.
us right there. So we do receive the intuition from them. The kids might be more open to a conversation.
Yeah.
So, and please use your ask for help to your spiritist educators. I have to say that it's much easier to talk about that and so many other subjects at the center than at the school I work for,
Yes. I
because
remember.
because knowing spiritism, you know, spiritism itself brings so much comfort and understanding of life, that if a child is part of the education, the Spiritist education program, they learn all this
Yes.
in the lessons. And so it does make easier for an adult to approach them and for them to open up.
Yes. I remember as a parent of a young child, when my daughter was younger than 6, we would do puppet shows at home. We have
Mm-hmm.
she had lots of dolls, so we used the dolls and kind of play and do something, right?
Yeah.
Or recreate some stories from a book that we read, right? Um, so in this way, because at that age, children are more concrete. They need to see, visualize, touch, right? So you could talk about, grandma. Let's say it's a boy, he loves cars. So it could have the cars represent different members of the family. So this car now is going to a different parking lot and going to stay there for a while, right? Because until we can go, because the car is too old, his mission has done here, right? It's going to stay there. So that it's a different way of broaching the subject, especially if it's not a spiritist family, right? Maybe they're not comfortable. Maybe they believe in heaven and hell. So whatever is the belief of the family, you can make it more concrete in those family meetings, uh, so they can understand what happened and process the grief, right? Do you have other suggestions like that? Like as the kids gets older, how would you uh, bring the subject? Can we get deeper and deeper into, let's say, a spiritual realm, mediumship, reincarnation? When do we introduce those topics, right? And how?
Yes, we can, like with our youth. the classes, or they go deeper into the knowledge of incarnation, discarnation, and spirit, the spirit's world. Um, so they already know all these things,
Yeah, it's very
and
young.
and they are open to come and make questions.
Uh-huh.
At least at our center, the classes are very dynamic, and they get to discuss and ask questions. They are part of the lesson. So, and we have the experience from the youth. Our youth goes from 13 to 18 years old,
Yes.
and they feel very comfortable with that because they know the process. They know that we are spiritual livings living
Mhm.
here on earth, that we belong there, not
Yeah.
here. This is the transition period, right? The temporary, I should say, that we can.
Yes.
And but sometimes we are there, sometimes we are here, and they, and that brings comfort to them.
Yeah.
Also, to know that when we discarnate, we have a team of familiar spirits over there waiting for us to
Yes.
welcome us,
Which
right?
can be very comforting,
It's
right? So
very,
that's another aspect
Right.
of spiritism that can be very comforting,
yes,
especially for the person that may be experiencing a death, right? They get there, have a long sickness, so it's a way for them to be comforted.
yeah. Well, in our center, one of the kids brought up the euthanasia.
Mm.
Euthanasia, yeah.
Euthanasia, because he said, well, if my mom is at the hospital, she suffers an accident and she's gonna die anyway, or if she's gonna be a cripple, I would tell the doctors just to unplug her and let her go,
Uh-huh.
because I don't want my mom to suffer.
Yes.
And then we had to explain that no, we don't have this right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to make, we can make that decision to make people's lives shorter, even if it's for a day, because that spirit may need that every single drop of fluid, vital fluid,
Mm.
until it's, the spirit is really ready to go, to move on.
Yeah. I
So
think
we had to talk about euthanasia, suicide, because they think that, oh, once life is done, it's done.
mm,
And it's not like that. We have the other side, to go
yes.
through again and to work and to learn more.
Yeah, and I think especially for teenagers, right? They like talking about
Yes.
this
Yeah.
more controversial, more deep, more complex issues that you need to think
Yeah.
both sides, get a complete picture,
Mhm.
right? So I guess we could talk more about that in a different day,
They-
right? Because
yeah, but
it in itself it's a long,
yeah,
Yeah.
complex
but
issue for us
just
to
to
analyze.
show that in different ages they process and they
Yeah,
understand, and they want more. They
yeah.
want to know more.
Because it could
They
happen
don't-
in your family that somebody
Right.
commits suicide, and now that teenager knows what happens. They may bring up what happened now, right? So you need
Yeah.
to be prepared.
I
Kathleen, you want to say
actually,
something?
yeah, actually, I think that what I find that is the most helpful in any kind of discussion, but especially in terms of death, because death involves so much more, like the death of the body. Like you said, there's so many heavy topics, like suicide, euthanasia, like all these stuff. What is important, I find, especially with kids and teenagers, is to receive all of that with curiosity and no judgment.
Mm,
I think that helps a lot. And because I find that a lot of the times people are afraid, and especially kids, of rejection, of feeling like, oh, I must have done something bad. When we receive with curiosity, and like Michelle was saying, like let's explain, let's hear why they brought this up, and then kind of go through, oh, I see your point here, and this is the spiritism, how we see it, and kind
Mhm.
of bringing both together, it can kind of dismantle the defensiveness that sometimes you will see from
yeah,
people.
I'd like to expand a little bit on that because you mentioned the word heavy, right? And
Yeah.
some people may think that the word death or dead is heavy, and they may try to replace it by, oh, it transition, oh, it's sleeping, right?
Yes.
But so
Right.
how what would you recommend, like, you know um is there some coding switch that we need to do depending on the age? How much is too much?
I think so. I believe that it's best to just use the words as it is.
Mhm.
Even though I sometimes I refer as transition because I see sometimes it's transitioning. It is
Uh-huh. And it
kind of
is a true fact, right? You
right.
transition from this plane to another plane,
Right.
right?
So, but it's both, right? The death of the body,
The
the
death
death
of the
of this
body.
life,
Yeah.
and the transition of the soul. You know, so it's
Yes.
kind of like both. But whenever I hear someone saying like, "Oh, dead," or it's too much, it's too macabre, or it's too, then I'm like, "Oh, I see this person has issue with the word."
Yeah.
So it's kind of more like, well, if you are finding that is a little bit difficult for you to talk about, then going a little bit inside and try to figure out why is it hard for you to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the normalizing using the word death and dying, and it dismantles all the myths around it, or the mystique, all the things that we created that makes it so difficult to talk sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well said. Michelle, you want to add something?
yeah, I'm always in favor to say the truth,
Mm-hmm.
be as real as possible. Telling a child, oh, so and so went to sleep. A child knows that we go to sleep and we wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So telling a child, who are you tricking?
Or even worse, they may now be scared of going to sleep.
Of going to sleep,
Right. That's a good point.
because children take it to their hearts
Hmm.
because of their developmental phase. That's how they understand. So
Yeah.
we need to be careful. And I wouldn't say go is going to sleep, is going on a vacation. No, because a child knows you go for a vacation, but you come back,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when is that person, if it's a young child, when is that person coming back? You don't want to nurture in the child the idea that that person will come back in a month, in 2 months,
Yes.
because that's how they understand it. So just use the word dad.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And again, as an educator, I see parents, because they want to protect, because they are afraid of the child's reaction, they prefer not to talk about certain topics or dismiss some of the child's concern. Be there, talk about it, give reassurance to the child that
Mm-hmm.
this is something natural and normal that happens to everyone.
Yeah.
And every living thing, it's the animals, the plants, the people too.
Yeah. Now, uh, in families where the practice of the God at home meetings, right? Where we start the gospel at home every week. Um, we have a time, a space,
Mhm.
a day to talk about anything that is related to the gospel or spiritual life, right? How does that, clearly that's a big help, right? How do you see, or especially you, Michelle, because you're in schools, but Kathleen also have a professional life, right? How do you see the difference in the conversation about death in families that do not have that resource, in families that do have that resource, or different religions, right? So how do you see the gospel or the children's understanding of the gospel help in that conversation? And I think this is a way to motivate more families to introduce that as early as you can in your family as well, right? So who wants to go first?
Well, I can go.
Okay.
Um, like I said, it's a lot easier to talk to families who are spiritists because they know the what happens right after death and reincarnation too. So it is a lot easier to approach.
Mm-hmm.
And again, use books and activities to reinforce that. And bringing our main focus should be validating the child's feelings and giving them reassurance
Mm-hmm.
and give them support, right? So it is but I mean, my school is a religious school too. It's a
Ah,
Methodist school, so I can talk about Jesus as much as I want, which I
okay.
love. Yeah, not everything we agree on, but
Yeah.
I can talk about Jesus as much as I want. So I have my Jesus, I call him my Jesus doll thing in the
Mm-hmm.
classroom, and we play with that Jesus to bring Jesus closer to them as
Mm-hmm.
much as possible, and to encourage them to talk to Jesus, talk to Jesus
Yeah.
in a prayer, you know, like we do at the Spirit Center. I kind of introduce a little bit
Yeah.
in my classroom
I
too.
wonder if ever a child asks you, but since Christ came back from the dead, will my grandparent come back also? Does that come up a lot?
I'll let you know. I will let you know now if they ever say something like that. Yeah.
How about you, Kathleen? In your professional experience, does the gospel or understanding the gospel makes a difference?
I absolutely. I think for everybody, children and adults, because what is it? What is one of the things? If you think about what is one of the things that we are afraid of? It's what is the unknown. We are afraid of the
Hmm.
unknown. We don't know, like we don't know how it's going to be once our body dies and our souls transition. There's
Yeah.
so many people talking about different things. Some people believe that it's the end of it completely, and then there's heaven, there's hell, or there's in spiritism we have the umbrella transitional period. um so I think that with like religion in general, spirituality in general brings this comfort, of there is some answers that I can find some soothing or some comforting thoughts of, okay, this is maybe not the end, there's a good point. And with spiritism specifically, you see that there is not the end of you as a being, right? You
Hmm.
continue on.
Mhm.
The only thing is almost like the body is clothed in a way. It's a very nice very useful, great clothes that we're very thankful for. But it's once it has it's done its thing, we can we move on. So it gives it's basically giving that continuity, the feeling of continuity, and making meaning into, oh, this life had a reason, this life had a purpose, there was progress. So meaning making also, that helps a lot with bringing, this isn't pointless. I mean, because
Yeah.
life can be hard too. So it's good to have that there was a purpose.
I think this idea of uh, that life has a purpose, it fits, it aligns both with religious or a-religious families, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you use your life to help someone, that is a purpose. So if that
Mm-hmm.
person passed
Mhm.
away, even if they don't believe in the continuation of life, that life was
Right.
important, right? So you can be remembered, it can make a difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Now, I'd like to turn to a little darker side of the conversation now, and I apologize for that in advance. But we are in the United States, and it's a reality here that we have these mass shootings happening, you know, every month, right? Now, and children in schools, they have to prepare, right? Now, how do we, what kind of resources can Spiritism help in our families? The children that are going to schools like this, and then they may have a drill. How Spiritism make those children feel more calmer or more faithful, more reassured? Um, I don't know if you had an experience with that, any trainings at your school, Michelle, that you can share with us. How's that? How can we deal with that better?
Many years ago, many years ago, we had a sniper here in Virginia, actually in
Hmm.
our area, specific in our area. I was in Brazil at that time, visiting family. So of course, I was not here, but they had to do lockdown training. And because the children are very young,
Hmm.
they didn't share much with each
Yes.
other. They just said that, okay, just in case we need to be safe. So they had to do the drill, the lockdown drill for the children to uh, at least to know what to do when something, or not be caught out of guard when if something happened. But I
Hmm.
remember they couldn't go to the playground. All the activities were done inside. It was more stressful for the staff than for the children itself, because our school goes from 2 to 5.
So in
There's
that case, the children were protected a little bit because they didn't need to know at the time
exactly.
more than what was
Yeah, and
necessary.
you don't want, it's not that we were hiding things for them, but
Hmm.
because of their age and their level of understanding, if we said too much, they would probably be afraid to go to school,
Hmm.
you
And
know.
Caitlin, what if one of these children actually lost a friend, right? Have you had this kind of experience? What can we, because they may pop up this question, was it just, right? He's so young. What did he do to deserve this, right? So I guess children may come up with these questions in your contact with them before, no?
That's a great question. And I mean, if you think about it, don't we adults ask that ourselves? Even with spiritism, even with everything, sometimes we still will be. At least I catch myself like, "How is this fair?"
Hmm.
But again, I don't have the history. I don't know. I mean, we're a spectacle in this universe, so I don't have the vision of what is all outside. God's plan and everything.
Hmm.
So it's a hard thing to sit with as an adult. And I find that what is helpful is to sit with the child or with anyone and just sit with it and stay with it. Because
Hmm.
once we stay with it and we process it and we talk about it, there will be a point of coming to terms with it, or acceptance, or so I find that it's a little bit like there is no right way. There
Hmm.
is no like a specific path, and this is the thing about grief and end of life and all this stuff, is that there isn't a specific way. I wish there was a formula, but
Yeah.
it's sitting with it, and it's being there with them, showing support through that, because it is a very it's disruptive. It's very disruptive, because in our minds of humans, we need to make sense of things,
Mm-hmm.
and there needs to be justice, and there is, and the truth is that sometimes we there. I believe in justice because I believe in God, and I believe there's a plan and
Yeah. The
everything.
whole point of reincarnation is justice, right?
Right. Right, but it's hard to explain that to the child, and I can say all the theories that I know, but the child is feeling with this sense still, because in their brains they need to make sense. We
Hmm.
humans, we need to make sense, and we like the good people get good things coming their way. So it's working with that of like it's complicated for us. We cannot see the whole story,
Yes.
and it's okay to sit with that discomfort. It's
Yes.
okay to sit with that.
And I wanted to close maybe a little more positive, but still acknowledging, violence has always existed, right, in our planet because we are still a world of trials and atonements. And it came to my mind the death of Stephen. It was a brutal death, right? And his sister witnesses it, right? And she found comfort with Ananias in Christianity, right?
Hmm.
And it was very beautiful the way that Stephen accepted his own reality and forgave his aggressor, and
Hmm.
even accepted him as his new brother-in-law.
Hmm.
Um, so I think even in death, we can find examples of understanding, self-sacrifice, love, forgiveness. Uh, you, so, Michelle, you want to maybe expand a little bit on that and say, you know, what are the positives of such a, what are the lessons, right, that we can learn for the immortal soul in such an example?
Yeah, and first I want to apologize. I'm typing here. I'm looking down and typing because I'm sending the books, a
Okay.
list of books for as a resource. Um, yes, I mean it's so hard to find something very positive. I think I would say that the fact that the families get together to grieve together, to talk about it, to talk about what they learned from Spiritism,
Hmm.
can be something positive out of this and bring the family even closer, right? And doing the gospel too. Those are moments that tie the knots, the spiritual knots between us. And because it's so hard to talk about that and tell a child that this is something, it's natural, but it's still very sad. I don't think they can see anything positive in that just because it hurts,
Mm.
right? I know some lessons that hurt are useful, and later we understand and we even thank God, right, for going through that.
Yeah,
That's
that's what I think I was thinking about. Like if you frame it like that, like nothing happens without God's permission.
yeah,
Even an act of such violence, it was fundamental for that part of the mission of Paul to have Stephen help him as a spirit in the spiritual realm. It could have been different, but it wasn't, and it wasn't wasted, right? It was life continued, right?
mhm. And
and
again,
that remained in his conscience for a long time. So he kind of instead of being strung by remorse and regret, Paul used that, and every time he was faced with stoning and humiliations, he would take that stoically, right? Just
mhm,
because Stephen was his example. So
yeah,
if
mhm,
our death can be an example for someone else, if our forgiveness can be a way for someone to
that's true.
change, right?
Yes.
That in the gospel they say that. Should you give your life for a thief or some kind of criminal, right?
Mhm.
And well, maybe, right? That will be the lesson that that spirit needed, right?
Yeah.
I
How
mean, what
about
a
you,
great
Kathleen?
opportunity.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what a great opportunity to learn about forgiveness. That's, we're here learning, we're here growing. So even on those hard moments, I think that there is a fear of experiencing hurt and pain and sadness and suffering, which is human experience, which is part of the human experience. So it's really normalizing that it's okay, you're gonna be sad.
Mm-hmm.
Something at the hospice that I used to work with that I used to say a lot is there is no shortcuts to grief. You have
Mm.
to go through it, because whether we like it or not, it's going to show up. I mean, it's going to show up in some way. If we're trying to contain it, it will show up eventually in outbursts. We're going to start losing with our friends, or
Mm.
we're going to start, we may lose our jobs, or we may overwork ourselves or something. So it's okay. That's going to be hurt. Yeah, it's going to be painful. And I always believe that once we go through it, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And one of the symbols of where the hospice that we used to work at, that I used to work at, one of the symbols was the butterfly, because
Mm.
you have that moment of a cocoon. You have that moment of, it starts as a larvae, and then it goes to the cocoon, and then it's a tough moment of compassion, containment, but then you become a butterfly. So there is, if you go through the steps in a healthy with community, which I think is super important, especially in spiritism. The spiritist community has helped us so many times. I mean, my personal experiences. So it was so important to have that, especially after the death of a loved one. So going through that with support, with allowing yourself to feel, allowing yourself to go through all the emotions, you can become a much more wholesome, integrated person. So in growth happens. I find that always growth happens,
Yeah.
and that's what we're here for.
Okay. Well, we are at time, and I still see questions being typed here. So if you have more questions, if your question wasn't answered in this episode of our family life series, please send them to our email or put here in our YouTube channel, and maybe we'll have another session to answer your questions, or we may send you an answer. I am very thankful for you, Michelle and
Oh, you're welcome.
Caitlin, for your contributions
Thank you.
today. I'm very thankful for you, our listeners from all over the world. I hope Jesus may bless your family today and always. And until next time, bye
So
bye.
be it, my
Thank
Thank you
you
friends.
so
very much.
much.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
It's a
Bye bye.
pleasure.
Bye bye.